everyone, my name is Naomi and I'm 13 years old. Recently, my mom got married for a second time, and along with a new dad, I got a new great aunt. Fortunately, she lives separately from us, but once I had to spend 2 weeks at her place, and she was this close to driving me crazy. One day, we were having dinner at a restaurant when my mom and Miles, my mom's new husband, completely surprised me by saying that they were going to spend 2 weeks in Hawaii for their honeymoon. So they had already agreed that I would stay at Miles's old Aunt Nora's house. Oh, the news made me so angry, and I felt that the situation was extremely unfair, so I threw away my fork and went to the restroom. I didn't pay any attention to my mom, who was yelling for me to come back. You see, Aunt Nora is already pretty old, and whenever we went to visit her, there was a strange smell in her home. It was like a mix of ancient perfume and medicine and something else. And the food that she cooked was so gross. And she felt like it was okay to criticize my nose piercing, or my yellow strands of hair, or my extra weight. So, I bet you can imagine how badly I wanted to spend time with her. 2 weeks later, my parents went on their honeymoon, and I moved in with Aunt Nora. She was nuts. For starters, she talked to a photo of her dead cat. I was unpacking my stuff when I heard her arguing with somebody, using really bad words. This made me interested at first, so I went to see what was going on. I found her staring through the window, while the cat's photo was just sitting on the windowsill, and she was emotionally discussing the strange outfit of some random girl outside. At first, I didn't attach much importance to this, but when the cat's photo was even present at the dinner table, it started to bother me. Additionally, there was a strict curfew. Aunt Nora went to bed very early, at 8 o'clock, and she wouldn't allow me to make any noise after that, and even forbade me to switch on the light. And that would be okay if she didn't demand that I not even use the bathroom at night. Can you imagine? According to her, the toilet flushing sound bothered her while she was sleeping. So, imagine my surprise when, on my first night there, she handed me a night pot that I was supposed to use instead. It was disgusting. But what's more, I couldn't really sleep well that night because I was in a strange place. And in the morning, it was 5 a.m. actually, I heard that she had already woken up. I thought that I could probably finally use a normal toilet, but when I peeped out of my room, I realized that she was going out somewhere. I rushed to the window, just out of curiosity. There was a small park across from her house, and I saw that she went there and started to hug the trees. That was more than strange. During breakfast, when I finished my regular yogurt, I threw the cup into the trash and went to school. And even before I had enough time to get outside of the house, I discovered that I had forgotten my cell phone in my room, so I had to return. She didn't hear me, and when I was passing by the kitchen, I saw her digging in the garbage and taking something out of there. It was the same cup from my yogurt, which she then started to wash. I couldn't believe my eyes when in the next second, she opened a kitchen cabinet and put it there, adding it to a bunch of other cups and packages. On my way to school, my mom called me to see how I was doing. And even though I knew that she was on her vacation far away and that she could do nothing about me living with Aunt Nora, I couldn't help but start to tell her how awful everything was. But then I heard that Miles was calling for my mom, saying that it was time for them to go to the restaurant. That made me so angry that I rudely wished her a good rest of her vacation and dropped the phone, abruptly ending our conversation. Later that day, I texted my mom about how unfair it was that she was having fun there, while I had to live with an old lady who was already out of her mind. She texted me back, promising that when she returned, she'd buy me something nice and fancy. I decided that taking into account the circumstances, I wouldn't agree to anything less than the new iPhone. So, after that, whenever something strange happened, I started to breathe deeply and imagine the new cell phone in my hand. For example, I did that when once a guy I really liked from school called me.
It was already 8:45 in the evening, but I was really looking forward to that call. Suddenly, Aunt Nora entered my room, looking creepy in the darkness, wearing her nightgown and nightcap, and took my phone away. She kindly smiled at me and said that it was already too late for calls from gentlemen, and then she walked away while turning the lights off.
Then, on a weekend, when I didn't need to go to school and stayed at home, Aunt Nora said that she was going to the pharmacy. There was no television at her house, and I got really bored. So I decided to look around a little bit. Well, actually, I began to open different drawers and look into the cabinets. And when I reached the storeroom, my jaw almost dropped to the floor because of what I saw in there. There were a bunch of different dried herbs and plants hanging from the ceiling, and the shelf below was full of glass jars. I looked closer and realized that in at least one of them, there was something like a preserved snake, and another one contained something that resembled the dried skin of reptiles. Believe me, it looked like I just found the warehouse of an old witch. I got really scared, and I was about to close the door of that storeroom when suddenly Aunt Nora coughed from behind me. Apparently, I didn't hear her return back home. Of course, she understood what was happening. She gave me a disappointed look, but then she kindly smiled again and said something like, "Young lady shouldn't rummage through somebody else's closets." She began to take something from that storeroom while I snuck back to my own room and started dialing my mom's number. I knew I would sound insane, but I had to tell her that she'd forced me to live with a boogie woman. No matter how badly I tried to convey all the horror I saw to my mom, she got really irritated and said that, in this situation, I shouldn't have been rummaging through her stuff, and that I'd better go and apologize to Aunt Nora. I, once again, tried to imagine the new iPhone in my hand, took a deep breath, and went to the kitchen, where my creepy aunt was cooking something that smelled really bad. But halfway there, I heard her talking to somebody, probably to the cat's photo again. She was telling them that she was going to poison someone. To be honest, a small part of me thought that she was talking about me, and since then I stopped eating at home. You know, just in case. During all those days, Aunt Nora and I barely socialized with each other. I mean, she wasn't really a relative for me, or someone I could talk to about anything that was on my mind. And apparently, since Aunt Nora never had any kids and lived her whole life alone, she also didn't really know how to chat with me. But then, on my last Saturday at her place, there was going to be this party at my classmate's house. And the guy I really liked was going to be there, so I definitely couldn't miss it. When I went up to Aunt Nora, she was busy playing cards. But when I tried to explain my reasons for going to the party, she, with her usual kind smile, refused to let me go there. She said that she'd be worried a lot about me being there, and that she was too old for that. I can't tell you how disappointed I was. Apparently, after having spent so long in that awkward atmosphere, I had completely lost my nerve with her. I was crying and yelling about how unfair she was to me. I ended up ruining her solitaire game, or whatever that was, and I went to my room, slamming the door behind me. Nobody could stop me that night. I waited until Aunt Nora went to sleep and snuck out of my room. I even tried not to breathe while I tiptoed past the door to her bedroom, carrying my shoes in my hands, trying to be as quiet as possible. Once I was on the street, I felt a kind of unprecedented freedom. I had to take a bus, so I was making my way to the bus station. It almost felt like I was flying all the way there. I stopped near one of the cars parked on the side of the road to look at my reflection, and to make sure that I looked stunning. Suddenly, somebody grabbed my elbow. I turned my head and cried out in horror. I saw Aunt Nora in her nightgown, with her hair that had come uncurled, and her face in the light of the lantern seemed completely wild. Only evil spirits can sneak up so quickly and silently. I tried to break free, but her grip turned out to be suspiciously strong for an old lady. I thought that my life was over, so I couldn't come up with anything better than to begin begging her not to kill me. Suddenly, the old woman stopped and looked at me intently. Then she tapped a finger on her head and asked if I had, by any chance, lost my mind. I told her everything about those creepy things that I found in her storeroom, and about the fact that I heard her talking about poisoning someone, and she began to laugh. Not a frightening laugh, but more like something from her entire heart. And then she told me that she was making homemade medicine from herbs and stuff, and that she was actually going to poison a mouse that she had discovered in a closet. And it was only then that I realized how stupid the whole situation was, and I also began to laugh. Then we hugged and went back home. The next day, my mom and Miles returned from their trip, and I finally got back to my normal life. But since then, I visit Aunt Nora with a little bit less reluctance. I mean, she really did have her strange little ways,